Hey guys, as we switch gears here, we now welcome in Michael Voris, the founder and president of St. Michael's Media, church militant, media enterprise established to address the serious erosion of the Catholic faith. He went to the University of Notre Dame. Then, after graduating from the University of Notre Dame, he started St. Michael's Media. He received his Sacred Theology Bachelorette from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. And he speaks all over the world. He joined us on radio a few years ago as well. We thought it'd be great to talk to him about some of the miracles and just incredible things that have happened that we see that we take for granted, especially on this Holy Friday. Mike, welcome into Cancel This. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Vic. Appreciate it. How you guys doing?
Very good.
Hey, first of all, tell everybody what you do and how they can find you, because what you have going on right now, and you are basically doing, I call it podcast and TV stuff, what we do now, for years before anybody else. Now you have a worldwide following.
Yeah, actually, that's true. So in the Catholic world, we were sort of the trailblazers of putting video on the internet. We go so far back putting video on the internet that back in the days when YouTube could only take 10 minutes and 16 seconds, we know that because that was our border. We used to chop up one of our shows we were airing on local television here in Detroit and reduce it down to exactly 10 minutes and 16 seconds. No one else in the Catholic world, and very, very few people who are baptized but not Catholic, were doing that. So yeah, we've been doing that since 2006. So it goes back quite a ways.
Before the days of being canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, long before. Nobody even knew the word canceled unless you were talking about your dinner reservation.
How many times have you been canceled, Mike?
Oh gosh, we've knocked off our video player. We're on SPLC's hate list. We were mentioned and discussed in the FBI dossier that came out.
What?
Got leaked in January. Got put out in the system in January and leaked in February. Yeah, we're all over the place.
What was the FBI
servers, everybody.
What was the FBI even investigating with you guys?
Their report was that traditional Catholics, which I guess I'd kind of object to the term, there's traditional versus faithful Catholics pose a threat of domestic terrorism and violence in overthrowing the government.
What?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you saw it. I don't know if you saw it or not, but
we
Senator
talked about
Josh
it on the
Hawley,
show.
Wow.
Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri actually grilled Merrick Garland, Attorney General.
Oh, we did run that, Tabitha. You're right.
Yeah, that report is what all of that was about.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is impressive.
All right. I know we were talking about
we take it as a badge of honor.
I know you wanted to talk about miracles and stuff, but this is fascinating.
I should have assumed that you guys were a part of that.
Of course you should have.
I feel like I want to applaud. Go ahead.
It does always find a way. And I'm glad you brought up truth, because that's exactly what my
Scotty,
question
can you bring up
is going to be.
the Padre Pio pic I sent?
Which is a very popular saint. You know, my stepfather worked for the Archdiocese for 35 years after he retired from being a chemist.
The Archdiocese of where?
For St. Louis, the Archdiocese of St. Louis. He was one of the very few and lucky people to be able to carry the Saint Bernadette through the St. Louis area when she came through this area. And she looked very much like Padre Pio here. But what I would like to know is there are so many people who will look at this photo and they will say, well, they restructured, and I know you've heard the story, Michael, they restructured his body with silicone. They rebuilt his body with silicone. He's actually wearing a silicone mask. Now, I know these are temperature-controlled glass cases, as they should be. But what do you have to say about when people say, well, their body is not really preserved, it's really just silicone and a face mask?
Well, first of all, there's several saints all around the world whose bodies, if you can explain that first, yes, Mike, before you answer the science question.
Sure, they're called incorruptibles. That when they died, their bodies did not decompose in the way that we just sort of typically think of it. You know, you just put them in the ground and essentially turn to dust and ashes and things all fall apart. The interesting aspect of this is that what is recorded every time they disentomb, is that the right word? Disinter one of these folks. One of these saints, is that at the opening of the tomb, whether it's like a big, slab on top of the coffin, or they're in the ground, or wherever they are, an incredible odor of flowers, normally violets, emits from the body in the tomb. Like it's recorded every single time this happens. And there's always, I mean, it's not like 2 or 3 people there. There's always, I mean, they're going to the grave in the first place, or the tomb or the mausoleum or wherever they are, however they're buried. They're going there because the person was recognized as having led a holy life, very holy life, like a heroic holy life. And in the process of, the years going by, a kind of veneration begins of the person. And at some point, if that lasts long enough, and it depends on who the person is and what time period you are in history and where it is and all of that in the church around the world, eventually they say, well, one of the things for us to find out if the person is a saint is to, meaning enjoying the beatific vision in heaven now, is, let's disinter them. And, that's usually to maybe, collect relics from the person, fingernail clippings or little bone chips or stuff like that. Catholics have been doing that back to before the 1st century. All the Catholics wanted to be buried around St. Peter on Vatican Hill because that's where his bones were. So they all wanted to be there. So there's a massive Catholic graveyard beside St. Peter underneath St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, going back 2,000 years. But one of the things, when they open up the bodies that are incorruptible, always have this tremendous odor of violets or other flowers around it. It's one of the very first things that gets recorded. And there is a saint in an incorruptible saint in Paris on Rue de Bac. Her name is Saint Catherine Labouré. Her eyes are open. I've stood and looked down into the glass case. Her eyes are open. She's incorruptible. Obviously when they transport them into, whatever the public display is, Saint Vincent Ferrer in Paris. I've been to looked at his incorruptible body as well. And
that's a big honor for you to not only see it, but for the very few people who are chosen to carry them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That your father was chosen for that is tremendous. I mean, that's a great
really
thing. Saint Bernadette is as fresh and supple as she was, 100, going on almost 200 years ago, 170 years ago, when our Blessed Mother appeared to her at Lourdes. It's not just the incorruptible. It's kind of a physical manifestation of a conquering of death. While the body is dead, it's preserved from the effects of death. It's just, it's a little miracle. The larger miracles around these particular saints is all of the moral miracles and physical miracles that happen to other people. And on the Padre Pio one, I can share this with you. My brother, God rest his soul, he died about almost 20 years ago now. Had a patient. He was a psychiatrist, my brother, and he had a patient who is when he was in Dallas, had a patient that was near death on some horrible disease, and he was dying from it. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, he was dying from something. It was a hospital, but he was relatively young. He was in his 30s, if I remember the story correctly. It was certainly not an old man.
Right.
And a number of people who knew him, he was not Catholic. A number of people who knew him, were friends with him or through marriage or family or whatever, were Catholic, and they started praying to Padre Pio. This was not very long after Padre Pio had died. He died in 1968. And the fellow told them the next day that a man with a very long white beard and a little bit of a chubbiness and a brown robe came and stood over by his bed and put his hands on his head. And he said the pain that like seared through him as long as he was holding on to him was indescribable. And then when he took his hands off him, he looked at him, they looked at each other, and he just vanished. And when the doctors came in, he was completely cured. He was on death watch, minutes before, and that was it. And he was telling this story to everybody, all of his friends and family and the whole bit. And one of his family members, this fellow's telling the story to my brother. So I mean, I can't get firsthand, but I can get secondhand. And he asked his family, or he told his family, and one of his family or friends or whoever went, wait a minute. And they went and got a picture of Padre Pio and said, is this the guy? And he said, yeah, that's him. That's him. Who is that? They said, oh my gosh, that's Padre Pio. He's been dead for like 15 years or whenever it was.
Wow.
And so it's the miracles that's, the incorruptible miracle it's cool. It's really awesome. I mean, like I said, I've had the ability to go look right into the faces through the glass cases of a number of incorruptible saints. But it's the miracles that surround them that affect other people, and they bring them to the church. They waken them up. They sort of, and particularly the cases of the incorruptible, because what is it? I mean, it's kind of a statement that, yes, the person that you don't live forever here on earth, you're going to die.
Right.
But the effect of death, St. Paul's beautiful words, death, where is thy victory? Grave, where is thy sting? That this is kind of a little appetizer that, yeah, the person's not here right now, at least not in the way they were, but death couldn't even do all of its horror to their body. And by the way, they're performing all sorts of other miracles also around the world at the same time.
See, that kind of stuff kind of confuses me a little bit, because it's kind of like would Mother Teresa be an uncorruptible because of what she did? It seems kind of like it's a little random. It's like, why do some people get this immortality in a glass case, but other people just deteriorate? For people, I'm not a Catholic, I'm Christian and I'm a believer, but the iconology of the religion, I love it and it's fascinating, but I always have a question at the end of all of this stuff.
I guess you could say, I mean, that's a good question. As our Lord said, the Spirit blows where it will.
Right.
This one, not that one. I mean, there were various people that our Lord walked right past and didn't cure. Could have. He could have. He's God. He could have just, gone cure, and had the whole entire crowd be cured immediately.
So what you're saying? So what you're saying is that God might be using this one just to kind of give you a, hey, look, I'm here.
But there was something special about Padre Pio. He had the ability to know what people were thinking, to know what was going to happen to them. Some people might call it a psychic.
Yeah. Not to mention the stigmata.
And I mean,
most importantly, it was the stigmata. He was the first recorded instance in all of church history of the stigmata, which is bearing in your own flesh the wounds of Christ, that they emerge in you and you suffer the pains. And on Good Fridays, interestingly, so you were on Good Friday, Padre Pio suffered intensely. They were witnessed by the wounds, the bleeding through the wounds. All of this stuff was witnessed, by hundreds and hundreds of people all the time. Whenever he would say Mass, and he used to wear fingerless gloves. But when he hold up the host and hold up the chalice at Mass, you could see the blood stains like swelling on the gloves that he was wearing. The first instance in all of church history where somebody actually suffered the stigmata that we know of was St. Francis. And that was only 1200 years, 1230, 1240. He was praying with his hands outstretched in front of a crucifix, and the stigmata developed on him from the crucifix.
Yeah.
So why didn't our Lord, give the honor of the stigmata to somebody else in
Scotty, I sent you a picture
history for 1200 years before that?
Yeah.
Who knows that?
But
that's what Mike was just describing with Padre Pio.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He's saying Mass right there, and since he's wearing rose-colored vestments, that's either Gaudete Sunday or Laudate Sunday. So that's happening either during Advent or Lent.
Wow, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.